Good afternoon and welcome to DCR's presentation of the 2024 license renewal process. We're just going to give folks another couple of minutes to hop on before we get started. So thank you for your patience. Good afternoon and welcome to DCR's presentation of the 2024 license renewal process. My name is Jason Kleen and I'm an Assistant Executive Director with the Department of Cannabis Regulation. Today, we're going to go over how applicants and licensees can renew their records for calendar year 2024. This affects all applicants and licensees with a record that ends in ANN. So everybody who's been transitioned over to our annual application process must renew their record. The code was amended in early June to require that all records that have at a minimum a status of local compliance underway needed to be renewed. And a status of local compliance underway is granted once the application is deemed filed. So at this point, everybody who has an ANN record is required to renew that record for calendar year 2024. The director has adopted a series of changes and amendments to the renewal process that have significantly reduced the fees. In prior years, the renewal fee was $4,233. And in an effort to streamline the process and, make sure that businesses were only giving us information that is absolutely necessary based on where their record is in our process, the renewal fee has been reduced to $646 per activity, which covers the cost to review the indemnification agreement document, the legal right to occupy document, as well as your business premises diagram. We are asking for an updated 4013 form based on conversations we've had with the Department of Cannabis Control to ensure that the environmental report that DCR prepares will at a minimum meet the state's requirements for their process. So we worked hand in hand with them and we have agreed to a series of questions that will help facilitate whether or not a categorical exemption would apply to a given project. So if you've already filled out the 4013 form, there is a new updated document on the website that includes the additional questions for the common classes of categorical exemptions that may apply to your project. You will need to fill those out in order to have a timely submitted renewal application. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and jump into our presentation. Most of the presentation is going to be presented in a PowerPoint format. However, I will be jumping to the DCR's website to show folks where they can find the forms, as well as jumping into the production environment of the Excel system to show folks how easy it is to actually submit a renewal record once the documents have been completed. So the 2024 license renewal period opened on Saturday, September 2nd. The regular renewal cycle will be through November 1st of 2023. So a renewal record must be submitted and all renewal fees must be paid on or before November 1st, 2023. If you don't meet that deadline, you may be assessed additional fees associated with a late renewal. Everybody who has an ANN record has to renew their ANN record. Folks that only have a status of local compliance underway, which means they have not yet received temporary approval or do not have a license to operate, will be paying $646 per activity. And then for folks that have temporary approval, you'll pay the $646 per activity, plus you'll be paying $24.68 for your location for the compliance inspection. Anybody who does not submit a timely renewal that has temporary approval, that temporary approval does expire after 11:59 p.m. on December 31st, 2023. So if you haven't timely renewed, your existing temporary approval does expire at the end of the calendar year, and you will have to cease operating until you get a new license. I'm going to provide a brief outline of the license renewal process. As always, the renewal process consists of two steps. First is you have to submit your renewal record through the DCR licensing portal and provide the necessary updated documentation that you're asked for. Secondly, you have to pay the required renewal fees to the Office of Finance. So to submit a renewal application, we're going to be requiring updated application documents consisting of an indemnification agreement, the project-specific information form, a current business premises diagram, and evidence of site control covering all or a portion of calendar year 2024. We understand that folks have entered lease negotiations at different points, so they'll have leases that expire at different points and they may go month to month. However, we do need some evidence that you do have a legal right to occupy your location getting into calendar year 2024. That could be an executed lease or a property deed. Payment of the renewal fees will go to the Office of Finance for records that just have a status of local compliance underway. The renewal fee is $646 per commercial cannabis activity. Again, previously the renewal fee was $4,233 per activity. And then for the records that have temporary approval, the renewal fees are the $646 per activity and $2468 for the record for the compliance inspection fee. So no matter what your situation is, the renewal fee is less expensive than it was in prior years. And then furthermore, if you have multiple activities and or multiple record locations, the fees are significantly less for you because the baseline fee has been adjusted downwards. As I previously mentioned, the revised renewal fees are less for all applicants and licensees. They're significantly less for businesses with multiple activities. Previously, we charged $4,233 per activity, and now the baseline charge is $646 per activity, which is covering the document review for the documents we are requesting as part of this renewal process. So the step-by-step renewal process guide consists of the following. You would log into the DCR licensing portal. You'll navigate to My Records. You'll identify the record that needs to be renewed for calendar year 2024. It will have a status of eligible for renewal. You can see it's underlined here. And then you'll click on the Action Required button to begin your 2024 renewal application. Once you are in the application, it's going to ask you to upload the 4 documents that we need for this renewal cycle, which consist of the LIC 4005 form, which is the indemnification agreement, the LIC 4013 form, which is the project-specific information document, a business premises diagram. It doesn't have to be the one that was uploaded as part of your 2023 record. If you've had any permits or approved tenant improvements that have occurred throughout the year, please submit the most current version of your premises diagram, because that's what our inspectors are going to be looking at when they go out to do their compliance inspection. And lastly, you'll submit the executed lease or a purchase agreement or property deed. Once you've uploaded the documents, you'll go ahead and click Continue to proceed to the next page. So this is what the screen looks like once you've successfully uploaded your documents. It'll take you to the confirmation screen. You'll read our attestation and then check the box that you agree to the above certification. If you need to go back, you can save and resume later, or you can click on the action button to amend or edit the documents that you've uploaded if you accidentally uploaded the wrong document. Once you're done, click Continue to go to the next page. The renewal fee amounts should be based on the activities that are on your record, as well as if you have temporary approval, you would be charged for the compliance inspection fee, which is just our standard inspection fee. Once you've completed your 2024 renewal application, you'll get a confirmation that your document amendment has been successfully submitted. What you'll see on your Excel profile under My Records will be a record number that ends in doc, and that will correspond to the submitted renewal documents for your record. Once the analyst has reviewed the record and completed the doc amendment review, those documents will be applied to your A&N record. Unlike prior years, once you've submitted your renewal, the record is locked. So folks have had questions about, why the record was locked. The record is locked to make sure that we're reviewing the information and it's not changing after we've done our review. If the analyst does need updated forms or additional information for you, they will reach out to you and let you know what additional information or forms we need. We will be assessing the invoices and fees on the A&N record. So once we've processed your invoice, you'll be able to go to your A&N record, click on record info, click on attachments, and then you'll find your 2024 renewal application invoice. And that renewal invoice will have a void if not paid by date of November 2nd, 2020 or November 1st, 2023. And then if you fail to timely pay the renewal fee by November 1st, 2023, you may be subject to additional late fees. Again, your renewal application is not deemed filed until the renewal application is submitted through the licensing portal and all required payments are made. So before I go into a deep dive on the license renewal documents, I'm going to briefly jump to the department's website. When you're on our homepage, what you can do is just navigate up to the top for licensing. Go to application forms and documents. You'll see a section for renewal forms and documents. When you click on that, you'll see the basic BCC form for the business premises diagram. At a bare minimum, that is what your premises diagram should look like, and it should comply with the DCC requirements. We have our updated indemnification agreement, and then we have our updated LIC 4013 form. So the premises diagram is just the basic bare minimum premises diagram. It does have the instructions on the back of it in order to, at a minimum, comply with the requirements. If you have a more professional or a render drawing of your premises diagram, please submit that. It's perfectly fine. We actually appreciate the additional information. For the indemnification agreement, it was updated earlier this year, so you will need to submit one as part of your renewal application. We will be using that version of the form for the annual license application process and getting everybody to a notice of complete annual application so that we can move our recommendations forward to the final decision maker. And then same thing for the project description form. I will be going through this form in a little bit more detail. We had a static version of the form updated on our website previously, and the admin team just recently got the fillable form completed and posted on the website. So if you don't want to print it out and handwrite your responses, you're more than welcome to use the new fillable form. And then lastly, when you navigate to the portal, and I can go ahead and log out, you'll just log in, click on the I'm not a robot button, sign into your account, navigate to My Records. Once you're in My Records, you'll see everything that you're a contact on. You can click on the status to look for things that are eligible for renewal. What I like to do is do things based on the status date. So if you click on the status date, it'll sort everything by when the record was updated. Everybody's record was updated to a status of eligible for renewal on or around September 1st of 2023. So most likely that is going to be one of the most recent records on your My Records page. You can see here that I prepped a record for this demonstration. So you'll click on Action Required. This will take you into the document screen. Just go ahead and upload the applicable documents. So your premises diagram, your evidence of site control, your completed indemnification form, and then of course your completed project specific information form. And then again, if you uploaded the wrong document, you can click on the Add button and just change the document. Or once you've continued from the screen, when you get to the final review screen, you can go down to Actions and you can view the details, or you can click on the Edit button. If you click on the Edit button, it'll take you back to the condition document screen. So you can go ahead and swap out the document for the correct version. Or if you haven't completed the forms, you can click Save and resume later. When you click Save and resume later, you'll get a temporary record that gets created. This record has not been submitted to the department, so it's not before us. So anything that has starts with 23 TMP is not actually submitted or before the department, and those temporary files get deleted from the system or closed out every 30 days. So if you have saved and continued later, you do need to go back in and resume your application by clicking the button, and then it'll take you back into the form, and then you can go ahead and proceed to submission. So as I previously mentioned, once you submit your renewal record, you'll see a record ID that has a doc suffix. Once we've accepted your renewal documents, this record will be closed out, and those documents will be added to your existing ANN record, and then we'll update the year from 23 to 24 so that we can continue processing your annual license application. You'll see that there's different conditions of approval that need to be met in order for your renewal record to be deemed complete and submitted. So once staff have reviewed the documents you've uploaded, they'll go ahead and clear those requirements and then accept your 2024 renewal application. And that's all there is to it. So now I'm going to take a moment to run through the actual renewal documents. First is our indemnification agreement attestation. It's by and large similar to the old version of the indemnification agreement. There's some language that's been updated based on certain changes that have either been made to the code or to different reference points. The project-specific information form is the one that has the most changes, so it will take a little bit of time to complete. The basic information that you put on your original 4013 form can be carried over. This is all information that you can gather from the Zoning Information Map Access System, or ZEMAS. This is where you're going to start to see the changes. It is a 24-page document. The first or the second page of the document is where you'll put in your project description. So where is your business premises located? What activities are you going to be engaged in? What is the surrounding area like? This is all critical information that we need to use to prepare our environmental document to comply with the California Environmental Quality Act. And we did provide draft environmental documents to folks that had temporary approval so that they could renew their state provisional license after July 1st of 2023. However, those documents are not final. They have not been approved. And we need this additional information to get those documents to a point where they will be deemed filed and submitted with a recommendation to issue an annual license. There's going to be a series of categorical exemption evaluation forms for the different categorical exemption types. So this is information that both the city and the Department of Cannabis Control at the state level find very important as it relates to your specific project and making sure that we have the required information to justify a categorical exemption determination should we recommend one for your project. So if you have questions about these forms, feel free to reach out to your assigned analyst. And if you're a social equity individual applicant and you've either been partnered with a coach, you can contact your coach, or you could sign up for one-on-one coaching. So if you want to sign up for one-on-one coaching, I would recommend you reach out to our social equity program team. So the class 1 is tied to existing facilities. So that's going to be, is the project site currently operating as a cannabis activity site or a similar use? Has it been operated for this purpose previously? Does the project involve an expansion of the existing structures that would be considered negligible, or no expansion of the existing or former use? How big is your project? If there is going to be an expansion, what's the size of the expansion in square feet? You can provide us any permitting information that you may have requested through the Department of Building and Safety. Would the expansion be less than 2,500 square feet or 50% of the existing floor area? Is the expansion going to be greater than 10,000 square feet? If it is, then you would not qualify for a class 1 exemption. If your project is not being serviced by public facilities, the Department of Water and Power, the Los Angeles Police Department, LA Fire Department, Building and Safety, etc., then you may not be eligible for a class 1 exemption. And then, is your project site located in an environmentally sensitive area? Do you need any water right permits, or are you serviced by the Department of Water and Power? Do you need to demo or remove any structures that are on the parcel in order to engage in your activities? These are the kinds of questions we'll be asking. For the class 2, we'll be looking for replacement or reconstruction. So are you replacing or reconstructing an existing structure on the same site? Is it a new structure? Will it have the same purpose and capacity as the prior structure? Does the project require a water right permit? Yes or no? For the class 3, which is new construction or conversion of small structures, does the project involve the conversion of existing small structures, including only minor modifications, or the installation of small equipment and facilities and small structures? Does the project involve the construction of new small structures? Is it within an urbanized area? Does the project involve the construction of 4 or fewer structures totaling less than 10,000 square feet? Is the parcel zoned for the proposed use? Does the project involve the use of significant amounts of hazardous substances? Are all necessary public services and facilities available to the project? Do either the project site or the surrounding land contain a sensitive environmental area? Does the project involve the construction of a single structure totaling 2,500 square feet or less? Does the project involve the use of significant amounts of hazardous substances? And then, for all sites, does the project require a water right permit? The class 4 is minor alterations of land. Does the project involve the removal of healthy, mature, scenic trees? Does the project involve alterations to land, water, or vegetation that would be considered minor? Would the alterations consist of grading on lands of 10% slope or steeper? Would the alterations consist of grading in an area determined to be a wetland? Would the alterations consist of grading in a specific area officially designated by a federal, state, or local agency? Would the alterations consist of grading in an officially mapped area? of severe geologic hazards, such as an earthquake fault zone? Does the project require a water right permit? The class 11 are accessory structures. So do you need to construct or place any accessory structures? Does the project require a water right permit? For the class 32, the infill development projects, is the project consistent with the general plan designation and all applicable general plan policies and zoning designation or regulations for the site? What's the project size? Is it 5 acres or less? Is the project site substantially surrounded by urban uses? Does the project site have value as habitat for endangered, rare, or threatened species? Would the project have significant impacts related to traffic noise, air quality, or water quality? Can the project site be adequately served by all required utilities and public services? Does the project require a water right permit or another environmental permit that could result in physical change to the environment? So as we were going through the 4013 forms that were submitted by folks, most of them we drafted a categorical exemption for a class 1 determination or the class 32 determination or both. However, there could be exceptions to the exemptions that would preclude us from using them. We've got a handful of questions that, based on responses, may mean that your project is an exception to the exemption and the exemption would not be able to be applied. In those cases, projects would be referred for an initial study, and then the applicant would be responsible for hiring a consultant to conduct an initial study, as well as prepare a more in-depth environmental document for submission to the department. Is your project visible from an official scenic state or a state scenic highway? If yes, would the project result in damage to scenic resources? Is the project located on a site included on any list compiled pursuant to Government Code Section 65962.5? Would the project result in a substantial adverse change in the significance of a historical resource? Can you describe the previous use of your facility? Was the site previously used for similar use? Then we've got information tied to your project operations. So what activities are occurring on site? What cannabis operation activities are owned by the same or different applicants? Project size, state license, hours of operation, number of employees, estimated daily trip generation, your sources of water, wastewater treatment facilities. Most folks are going to be serviced by the Department of Public Works, Bureau of Sanitation, as well as the Department of Water and Power as it relates to water and wastewater treatment facilities. If you are adjacent to an unincorporated area, you may have a different waste hauler, but by and large, your project will be serviced by either DWP and or the Bureau of Sanitation. You'll describe the environmental settings for your project site, general topographic features, natural characteristics, whether water courses or riparian habitats are within 150 feet of the proposed premises, drainage swales, steam courses, springs, ponds, lakes, creeks, etc. Whether or not the property contains natural features of scenic value, whether the property has any historical designations or archaeological remains on site, whether the property contains habitat for special status species, identify the location and the quantity of hazardous materials that would be stored, used, or disposed of at the project site, discuss whether the project will increase the quantity and type of solid waste or hazardous waste that is generated or stored on site, what the anticipated operational energy needs are, explain whether if any of the project activities will expand the existing footprint or the proposed facility beyond the current structure or parcel boundaries. The environmental commitments are, Have you agreed to protect any biological or cultural resources located on the site? Any other information you feel is relevant to the CEQA process and reviewing your project? And then finally, the different types of permits that may be required for your specific project. At a minimum, you're going to need a license from the California Department of Cannabis Control. You may need a fire permit based on your activities. You may need to do tenant improvements or submit plans to the Department of Building and Safety to update your certificate of occupancy. You may have to reach out to the California Department of Fish and Wildlife or the State Water Resources Control Board. All applicants are going to be required to get a public health permit from the County of Los Angeles. You may have to reach out to AQMD, which is the local air district. Most folks are not going to have to deal with any stream bed alteration agreements or water quality protection programs. You may need to do a power upgrade if you're doing cultivation or other activities, which would require permitting from the Department of Water and Power. And then depending on the waste that you're generating at your project location, you may need a permit from the Department of Public Works Bureau of Sanitation. So those are the most common permits that somebody may need to engage in commercial cannabis activity. And then the final page of the document is just a summary of the different types of categorical exemptions that may apply to your project and what the California Code Regs sections are for each of those different categorical exemptions. In terms of your business premises diagram, we've tried to set the floor as low as possible to get us the information we need at a local level to evaluate your project. The state does have more in-depth requirements. So to the extent that you're already going to prepare a premises diagram that complies with the Department of Cannabis Control's state requirements, you might as well just submit the same document to the city or upload that version of the document once the state has approved it. In terms of the license renewal fees and information, you'll submit your payment of the renewal fees to the Office of Finance. There are multiple ways to pay. You can call and get an appointment or email for an appointment and then do a walk-in appointment same day if they have one available. You can mail in your payment, and we're in the process of creating the e-payment system through the LA Tax. So hopefully that'll be online in the coming months. As I mentioned, payments can be made in person with cash, check, money order, credit card, or by mail. If you want to request an in-person payment appointment, you can email finance.csd.appointment@lacity.org. You must schedule and confirm your payment appointment with the Office of Finance by November 1st of 2023 in order for it to be considered timely. Payments may be considered timely if you schedule and confirm a payment appointment by November 1st, even if the appointment occurs after November 1st, and mail payments must be postmarked on or before November 1st of 2023. Late renewal applications and/or late renewal payments may be submitted after November 1st, but will be subject to the expedited services fees, which is the 1.5 rate. And then submission of a renewal application and/or payment of the renewal fees does not guarantee renewal. Businesses are required to be in good standing with the Office of Finance. You can submit your 2024 renewal application if you're not in good standing. However, as part of the renewal process, you will have to come into good standing before a new license is issued. And with that, we will jump into the 2024 renewal process question and answer.
Good afternoon. Hi, Jason. Our first question comes from Amanda S. And she asks, can the same documents that were uploaded for the provisional license be uploaded for the annual renewal?
For the business premises diagram, if it's still relevant and consistent with the form and manner that the property is being utilized, yes. If your existing lease agreement covers all or a portion of calendar year 2024, or it gives you the option to go month to month after the regular lease agreement has expired, yes. You will have to submit an updated indemnification agreement, and you will have to submit the updated Form 4013 that has the additional questions that will be required of DCR in the state.
Our next question also comes from Amanda. What does the compliance inspection fee cover?
The compliance inspection fee covers the cost of an inspector going out to your facility to review your facility for compliance with local law and the rules and regulations. Compliance inspections are one of the things that the city controller had recommended for commercial cannabis businesses. And it's something that's also important to make sure that folks are adhering to all of the different rules and regulations as it pertains to local commercial cannabis activity.
Our next question comes from Joshua E. What are the differences in renewing the license this year, especially with regard to annual and CEQA requirements?
So for this year, we're really just asking for the documents that are going to be necessary to make sure that you can get to a stat or notice of annual license, complete annual license application. As part of the renewal process, you're updating documents and records on the ANN. And, we did come to an agreement with the state in terms of what questions will be answered and required as part of our environmental analysis, such that the state would be in a position to review our report and possibly adopt our findings as the lead agency for your project. So we do need that additional information. Additionally, we've updated the indemnification agreement. Folks will have an opportunity to update the ownership and primary personnel on their legal business entity record at a later date, which will be necessary to get to a notice of complete annual license application and get to the point where we issue a staff report making a recommendation to issue an annual license to existing applicants and licensees. So the big things are those 4 documents. We've significantly reduced the fees, but we're trying to make sure that everybody is positioned to navigate through the current annual license application process so that we are positioned to either make a recommendation later this year or early next year for the issuance of annual licenses, with the understanding that the state has a number of dates coming up where folks are going to have to transition from provisional licensure into annual licensure.
Our next question also comes from Joshua. Will we receive a notification when we are able to pay our renewal invoice?
Yes. Folks will be getting an email communication once the invoice has been generated and posted to their record. Depending on the age of your record, the invoice may not be populating correctly. So staff are going through the records and making any necessary adjustments and then posting a clean invoice to the record. And then the Office of Finance, to help facilitate the timely payment, will have 2 additional staff coming on board sometime next month to help with payment processing.
Okay, our next question comes from Erica O. Can you please explain CEQA as it relates to this renewal process?
So CEQA applies to projects of a discretionary nature before the city. So far, folks that are operating based on temporary approval, and their temporary approval has to be renewed annually. The city opened up the formal annual license application process in June. And prior to September 1st, everybody who was eligible or had a status of local compliance underway or temporary approval was migrated over to that annual license application process. A complete CEQA document needs to accompany the staff report making a recommendation to issue an annual license. Based on prior guidance from the Department of Cannabis Control and working with them to try to make sure our local applicants were meeting the state's requirements as well as the local requirements, we had posted a 4013 form. Based on feedback that the state provided us, we expanded the 4013 form to cover a series of questions that are applicable for the state and local review for CEQA compliance. And we are requiring folks to submit an updated version of that document with their 2024 renewal record, such that we can get you to a notice of complete application so that we can begin the process to transmit a staff report to either the director or to the Cannabis Regulation Commission for their consideration. Long story short, in order to issue an annual license, DCR has to prepare an environmental report, and that environmental report has to be adopted in conjunction with the recommendation to issue an annual license. So nobody can get an annual license without meeting the requirements under CEQA and then having that decision maker adopt those findings in addition to the recommendation to issue an annual license.
Our next question also has to do with CEQA from Jen M. What is the difference between the 4013 CEQA form uploaded to the website this week and the one previously published?
So there's a series of questions that are directly tied to the common classes of exemptions that may apply to a project. And those questions were developed in conjunction with the Department of Cannabis Control. So that's the type of information that the state is going to require. And since we're serving as the lead agency for the environmental process, we do want to collect all of the information that the state would need for their review, even if it's above and beyond what we would normally collect. So we've expanded the 4013 form to include an additional series of questions to satisfy local and state requirements, as well as the questions that, based on a response may trigger an exemption from or an exception to the exemption, i.e., because this factor occurs on the project site, an exemption is no longer eligible and we'll have to do a more involved environmental review, which would start with an initial study.
Our next question also has to do with invoicing this time, and it's Angelica P. I renewed our annual application on Excella, but didn't get the invoice. How do I obtain the invoice?
So we are making sure that the applicable application fees are being applied correctly, which would be the $646 per activity. And then if you have temporary approval, the compliance inspection fee of $2,468. The invoices will not be generated against the doc record. It will be invoiced against the A&N record. You'll receive an email notification once the invoice is generated and attached to your record.
Our next question comes from a few individuals, Arthur S., Chauncey B., Ingrid M., and Laura D. Can I file a fee waiver for the annual license renewal process?
Unfortunately, the department doesn't have money set aside for fee waivers as it relates to the renewal process.
Our next question from Lavon E. If we hold a temporary license, once we renew, are we actually submitting an annual app, correct?
So you're not submitting the annual app. Everybody has been migrated over to the annual license application process, and the documents and forms that we're requiring were also required as part of the temporary approval process just to get into the annual license application process. So you're only renewing your temporary approval and providing the updated documents that are necessary based on how the code has been amended, as well as the additional requirements to comply with CEQA. If your renewal application is approved, that will renew your temporary approval. It doesn't result in the issuance of an annual license.
Thank you, Jason. Our next question comes from Amir G. Are applicants still in the TA licensing process required to renew their application?
Yes, all records with a status of local compliance underway must be renewed. So any record that has an ANN suffix must be renewed. Pre-application review records that were deemed eligible for further processing do not have to be renewed because they have not submitted an application yet.
An additional question from Amir. If a TA license is obtained in October 2023, is the 2024 renewal period still within the 2023 calendar year?
The answer is yes. So if you have an annual license application, that means you have a record with a status of at least local compliance underway. So on September 1st, you will have all of the records that met the requirements for renewal were updated eligible for renewal. So you'll have to submit your updated documents as well as pay the $646 fee per activity. If you get temporary approval later this year, you would be separately invoiced for your compliance inspection only because you would have already paid the activity renewal fees on your record. But the issuance of the compliance inspection fee would have a 30-day payment period, even if it happens outside of the normal renewal cycle. So for instance, if you got a temporary approval on December 1st, you would be invoiced for your 2024 compliance inspection, and then you would have 30 days to pay. If you got temporary approval on January 1st, you would be invoiced for your 2024 compliance inspection, and then you would have 30 days to pay.
Our next question comes from Chauncey B. Can licenses be relocated during the renewal process?
If a modification to relocate is processed and an additional record gets created, you may be subject to having to renew that record. And if you still have temporary approval, if you have temporary approval and you plan to operate at your existing location while you're going through the relocation process, you would have to renew the existing ANN record and pay any compliance inspection fees that are applicable.
Thank you, Jason. Shavela A asks, what is the last day to pay for renewal, and can you renew if you still owe vendors?
The regular renewal cycle ends on November 1st, 2023. A few years ago, the city amended the code to allow for late renewals to be submitted, subject to additional fees. I'm not sure what the question about vendors is applicable to. If records are not timely renewed, they will just expire at the end of the calendar year. And, should you want to continue to pursue a license, you'll have to refile. And any expired license has 3 years to be refiled. And if it's an application that just expires, you'll have to refile by submitting a new application record.
Brandon D is asking, where can I find CEQA information for the project-specific information form 4013, such as council district, community plan area, neighborhood council, zoning, specific plan area, general planned land use? Is this information centralized anywhere?
Yeah, on the Department of City Planning's zoning information map access system, you'll be able to look up an address and get all of the information associated with that address. So the website is zimas.org. And then again, you can search your business address and get the zoning, jurisdictional, public safety related information to help populate the 4013 form. And then in terms of the individual questions, to the extent that they relate to a state code, we've added what state code it applies to. So if you need additional information on those state codes, you can just look up that section number and then go to the state website that has the information and the requirements for complying with that specific section. And then again, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to your analyst. And if you're a social equity individual applicant and you've been partnered with a coach, you can reach out to your coach, or you can reach out to the social equity team to see if you could be partnered with a coach.
Thanks, Jason. Dana C and Logan F ask, if we received a notice of exemption, do we still need to submit 4013? If so, why? Is CEQA a one-time determination?
Yes. If you received the draft notice of exemption from DCR to help facilitate your renewal of a state provisional license, you still need to submit the updated 4013 form, because that's the information that we need in order to prepare the final environmental report that would be transmitted to either the director of the Cannabis Regulation Commission. The draft NOEs that were submitted are just that, a draft, and they were issued to comply with the updated renewal requirements imposed at the state level. So your CEQA determination has not been finalized until we actually complete the environmental analysis report and the decision maker adopts a CEQA exemption determination and then adopts the recommendation to issue the annual license. So at this point, nobody has a final environmental document and nobody has a published notice of exemption.
Our next question comes from a couple individuals, Tiffany W. and Anahi, and it's in regard to forms. Sometimes they're required multiple times or to be submitted multiple times. Are there plans to simplify the process?
I mean, the simple answer is yes. Some of the forms have been updated based on changes to the local municipal code. Some of them have been updated based on communications with the Department of Cannabis Control to make sure that we're collecting all of the necessary information that they'll require as part of their review process so that folks don't get tripped up later. We have been simplifying the process by consolidating forms as well as eliminating any redundant plans or information that we don't need to review at this time. Folks previously were going to be required to submit security plans, standard operating procedure plans for each of the cannabis activities, but that would be duplicative of what the Department of Cannabis Control is doing. So what we've done is tried to simplify our process to focus on time, place, manner, our local municipal code, and then of course our rules and regulations, and eliminate anything that's duplicative of the state process that's not also required at the local level.
Hi, Jason. I wanted to do a little check-in on time. It is 12:55. We have about 19 questions, 18, 19 questions to go. What is your schedule?
I can probably give you another 15 minutes.
Okay, I will ask questions as quickly as I can. The next question from David S. With a technically smaller window of time to make in-person appointments at the Office of Finance, will they have more staff dedicated to make cannabis payments during this renewal period compared to last year, or will they allow walk-in payment queue?
The general answer to both questions is yes. Finance is hiring 2 staff that'll start next month that'll be focused on processing only renewal payments. And then one of the things we rolled out earlier this year is allowing same-day appointments, provided the Office of Finance has appointments available that day. So for what some people refer to as a walk-in appointment, is a email is sent to DCR and the Office of Finance. And if finance has an appointment slot to accommodate your request, it could be set up the same day.
Our next question from Rick J. What is the total renewal fee for an existing temporary permit micro business?
So businesses that have temporary approval would pay the inspection fee of $2,468, and then they would pay $646 per activity. So whatever number of activities you have times the 646 plus the 2468 to cover the compliance inspection.
Thank you. Thomas T. If my business has several licenses, can I renew them all in a batch, or is it one at a time?
It can be all of the activities associated with the record can be renewed at the same time.
A question from AT. Can we pay renewal fees with a card?
Yes, if you schedule an in-person appointment with the Office of Finance, they do accept credit card.
From Tim M. I received notices about the deadline being the end of September, but I see info about December 31st. Which is it?
So the 2024 renewal process started on September 2nd. The regular renewal period ends November 1st. But council did adopt a late renewal cycle, which would allow for late renewals to be submitted through the end of February 28th. All records expire at the end of the calendar year if not timely renewed.
Van H. When do I renew my license if my expiration date is May 22nd, 2024?
All of DCR's licenses expire at the end of the calendar year. The individual asking the question may be asking about a state license because the state license is valid for 1 calendar year from the date it's issued. But all of the local City of Los Angeles licenses will expire after 11:59 p.m. December 31st of 2023, and then you can only operate if you've been issued a 2024 license.
From Mike S. Will DCR allow applicants to add language on previously submitted indemnification forms so that it will have all the language which is on the new form?
Analysts will be looking to see if the submitted form complies with the current version.
MS also asks, can DCR allow for the upload of the original 4013 form as part of this renewal application and consider it timely, but then give additional time for the newer version to be completed?
I mean, conceivably what would happen is if the original 4013 form was submitted, once the fees were paid and the analyst begins their review, they'll identify that the form is deficient, and then they'll ask for you to submit the updated form and then answer the questions. So technically, you could submit a deficient document, and then when staff get around to looking at it and processing it, they'll inform you of the deficiency, and then you generally have 30 days to cure.
Anahi asks, if we have an old 4005 of 4004 forms from previous versions, will they suffice, or do we need all new forms?
We need the updated 4005 form as well as the updated 4013 form.
Tiffany asks, what is the next step if we have already received an email saying we are eligible or approved for a CEQA exemption?
So the emails that DCR has sent out were draft environmental review based on the 4013 forms that we had reviewed in your project description and your location. Those are not final forms. Those were only intended for folks to be able to renew their state provisional license after July 1st of this year. In order to comply with the new state requirements, applicants had to evidence that their local jurisdiction was serving as the lead agency and had at least completed its initial environmental analysis, which is why we issued those draft environmental documents. But they are only drafts, they are not final, and they have not been adopted or submitted for approval by the county and state.
Anahi asks, do homeless encampments count as environmental habitats? How do you define scenic?
I think we'll have to address that question at a later date. I don't have any existing knowledge on how homeless encampments would be analyzed, so I'm not in a position to answer, sorry.
Anahi also asks, is there a division of DBS designated to help applicants expedite permitting for cannabis use?
Building and safety has 2 personnel that are supposed to serve as concierges for folks that are licensed or pursuing a license with the Department of Cannabis Regulation, to make sure that your plans are being routed to the appropriate, parties. And then building and safety does have expedited permitting fees to facilitate navigating plans more quickly through their processes. I would recommend reaching out directly to the Department of Building and Safety. And if you've already done that and you haven't been linked up with their current case manager dealing with cannabis, you could reach out to your analyst.
MS asks, as you mentioned that all applicants will have to deal with the LA County Health Department, but I thought that was only for retails. Can you please clarify?
Every commercial cannabis business, regardless of activity, is required to get a health permit from the county. Retailers have to get a health permit and get an emblem once they've complied with the county's health permitting processes. The emblem is a requirement for retailers to continue operating beginning January 1st of 2025. So generally, the emblem would be issued with the health permit for the retail storefront activity. But all commercial cannabis businesses, regardless of activity, will have to get a health permit from the LA County Department of Public Health.
Alexis L., when do we have to be cleared, verified by the Public Health Department? Does it need to happen with this annual renewal?
It doesn't have to happen with this annual renewal. However, folks will have to comply with the public health permit requirement in order to get their operating permit.
MSS, you mentioned, oh, that was asked already. I think that was a dupe. Give me 1 second. Amir G, if I've passed my DCR inspection in August, but haven't yet obtained temporary approval for 2023, must I still pay the compliance inspection fee by November when completing the annual renewal process?
So these are assessed based on the status of the record being renewed at the time the renewal application is being submitted. So if you have not been updated to temporary approval, it will not immediately assess the standard inspection fee, which will cover the compliance inspection. But however, you will be invoiced for that standard inspection fee if you do receive temporary approval, since you haven't paid for the 2024 inspection fee at the time of temporary approval.
MS asks, can the new 4013 form have blank sections if we combine it with the already finalized previous 4013 form?
Again, staff are going to be looking to see if we have a complete document. So without seeing the document that's submitted and being able to, identify whether or not all of the information has been submitted, it's hard for me to say. If there are deficiencies in the form, our team will reach out to ask for updates or new documentation.
Our last question from MS asks for clarification. Please confirm whether you stated that all records for the same business can be renewed at the same time. If so, which record number do we use?
I would word it a little bit differently. So every record with an ANN suffix must be renewed. When you go to renew that record, you're able to renew all of the activities listed on the record. So if you have multiple records at the same location, each of those records has to be renewed individually.
I believe that's our last question, Jason. Thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure. And I'd just like to thank everybody for attending today's license renewal webinar. If you have additional questions, please email dcrlicensing@lecity.org or give us a call at our main line 213-978-0738 during normal business hours, which are 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Thursday. With that, I just want to thank everybody again and have a great day.